Welcome to the I Fell Into This podcast for recruiters who fell into recruitment. Today we are joined by the wonderfully moustached Phil Smith, talking everything MSP and all the benefits and everything in between. So great to see you, Phil. Thanks for coming along.
Thanks for inviting me.
And we'll kick off by asking, how did you fall into recruitment?
I guess that's $1 million question, isn't it? When I left university, I think like a lot of people, I was trying to find a way to utilize some of the knowledge and skills and experience that I'd gathered across that time. For me, I really enjoyed the research piece. And given that I had completed a psychology degree, I was also quite interested in people. That transpired into my first role, which was in executive search. I think it really captured the data-driven focus that I wanted to have in my role, and also, of course, then kind of blossomed into more of the consultative approach of engaging with people from many different backgrounds all over the world.
Cool. Well, that's great. Thank you for that. And so today we're going to be talking about MSP.
Mm-hmm.
So for those who aren't aware, MSP, what is it? What does it look like?
Again, I think a really good question.
Yeah.
Probably good that we got that in at the beginning. I think.
Yeah. Let's cover that off straight away.
I also imagine that you could probably ask 10 people and the same question and probably get 10 different responses as well. So I'll give you my interpretation of that. So MSP, Managed Services Provision, ultimately is a way for organisations to outsource their talent acquisition process via one partner who acts in a very consultative way in order to then engage with a number of different recruitment partnerships to deliver hiring activity for that organisation. It's a way to really drive efficiencies, cost effectiveness, and to really help organisations sort of move into a more strategic place where they're going to achieve their organisational goals as well. Cool.
Okay. Makes sense. Sounds good.
Cool.
Perfect.
Good. Ask me tomorrow, you'll get a different
answer. Okay.
I'm interested to know what the other 9 answers might be.
Yeah. Okay. And what makes MSP and the MSP solution so unique in the market then?
So I think in terms of what we can offer from our perspective is very unique in the market. We as SSG have a network of over 100 different partnerships. These are founder-led recruitment organisations. So I think the level of dedication and passion you'll see that they have is quite different from what could be kind of quite, I guess, nameless and faceless organisations out there. The fact that we also have such a broad reach across sectors, across different types of functions, means that we can leverage that power in a way that is very unique to the market. So we can, as SSG, come to organisations, to really manage the delivery of a unique solution that will likely have absolute experts in every function that's required to be hired for a company.
Cool. Okay. No, that's great. That's great. And from a client side of things, then. What are the main benefits for them? Why would they go down that kind of MSP offering then as opposed to the contingent route?
Sure. So I think, again, if you ask individuals at the C-suite level, you'll probably get a slightly different answer to that question. But the benefit will be to help an organisation meet its goals. And those goals may differ depending on sort of who you're talking to. It could be trying to achieve efficiencies in process. It could be trying to achieve cost effectiveness. It could be a way to centralise what is a decentralised hiring process. There could be a whole number of reasons why organisations would want to go down that route.
So there's a lot more intricacies as opposed to that contingent, just filling one role, right?
Absolutely. And again, I think, where the power of this type of solution sits is really supporting organisations from a strategic perspective. This type of solution will work with leaders looking at their year ahead, for example, and understanding what does that workforce plan look like, how is that phased, for example, and then working back, when do we actually need to start hiring in order to achieve those goals, and also to make sure that we're reaching the budgets that have been set. So to do that enables, again, if you're working sort of with one master organisation, to really help plan that and plan that effectively to deliver against the budget. You're also introducing a consistency of process. That's going to have a much more positive impact in terms of time to hire, cost per hire, quality of hire, all the metrics that you really want to see kind of getting into the green. I think utilising a very large sort of PSL of contingent recruiters means that hiring managers and HR leaders and internal TA folks, spend 50-60% of their time dealing with multiple organisations, often having the same conversations, and trying to schedule say 4 interviews with 4 different organisations. So it's a logistical challenge as well that this solution really helps come in and ultimately remove.
I think what you're looking to do there effectively is take away a lot of pain points.
Absolutely.
From any kind of person involved in a recruiting process. Like say we've got multiple roles, multiple agencies. If I'm in that position, I want to make that as easy as possible, and I want to take away the stress from that.
Exactly, and the stress can be from a number of different areas. If you're dealing with one organisation, you're also going to have consistency in terms of things like terms and conditions, for example. You're not going to have that variability that you'll see when you're working with multiple external organisations. So actually, it's a lot easier to forecast your spend up front, which is very useful for organisations. I think to your point, it takes hassle away and enables HR teams and leaders to focus more on some of their strategic goals rather than being very focused on the operational piece.
And then, because obviously being quite a big process then, who are the kind of stakeholders that need to be involved in sort of managing or liaising with all this?
So typically, when I've been working in this kind of large-scale outsourced sort of model, the core stakeholders are the same regardless of the size of that organisation. I've worked with SMEs, I've worked with large global enterprises. I've worked nationally, regionally, globally, and it's pretty much always the same. You have absolutely your chief people officer, your VP of HR, whoever sort of is that sort of suite leader within the people space, obviously is a very clear stakeholder to engage with. But we also want to engage with, for example, the CFO, the CTO, the CEO, the Chief Procurement Officer as well. What we want to be able to do is align a solution that really benefits everyone at that C-suite level. So, at a very high level, that's really where our stakeholders sit. And then as you filter down through the organisation, we're working with functional leads and then hiring managers beneath that as well. So what you end up is with this sort of governance model where you are really going top down within the organisation.
Must be quite a few challenges with dealing with that many people then. What's kind of the common themes that come across? Is there difference of opinions, obviously, I imagine, quite a lot?
I would say within my experience, perhaps, yes. But ultimately, I think some of the challenges are probably more, and this is typical across most organisations, is in the change management side of things.
Right.
Because what you're doing is coming in and changing something which people are very used to doing. What we're trying to do in this model is drive consistency to make sure that we're following ideally a single process where possible. When you're coming in and working with managers and leaders and changing things around, that can be quite challenging. So it's very critical that you run through quite a strong communications process externally and internally within that organisation to really talk hiring managers and leaders through the changes that are being put in place.
I suppose in its simplest form, it sounds like a bit of a no-brainer, okay? But when you actually get into it and you see the levels that you've been talking about there, it becomes a bit more complex.
Oh, absolutely. And the complexity sits at every level. It could be, as I said, having worked with SMEs to large global organisations, and across several decades, it's really interesting because you see the same challenges within those organisations, and that is typically, we have an issue with turnover, which actually working back is there an issue with quality? So actually working that back, is there an issue with our hiring process? Is there an issue with hiring manager training? Working it back, you can typically see the same sort of challenges there. It's taking too long to hire, people are leaving too quickly, it's costing too much. Competitors seem to be getting to the market quicker than us. Do we have a brand issue? And also as well, I've seen a lot of organizations really not optimizing the technology that they already have. So often we're not introducing new technology, or actually just teaching them how to use what they have in a better way.
Right. Again, so the efficiencies.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. And so you mentioned, obviously, you've worked across like SMEs and large corporates providing this solution. But what is, because this won't be necessarily suitable for every business out there. So what's kind of the ideal customer profile then for the MSP solution?
So again, a really good question. I think that there are a number of organizations where the model perhaps is better suited. I think it's a model that could actually sit across a lot of organizations. I would say organizations that are looking to scale, absolutely. This is a way of working with one provider to help deliver that and enable the organization inside the organization to focus on achieving those growth goals. I'd say an organization that wants to manage its budget more effectively. An organization that is struggling to hire, who doesn't necessarily have enough of a headcount to need an internal TA team. So you'll have a lot of the HR leaders or hiring managers running the recruitment, which leads to this massive sort of variability in process and cost. Any organization that faces growth challenges or is working within the current market would I think this type of solution would work. I'd say historically or typically, we talked earlier about the MSP definition. So I think traditionally that model was seen more within the higher volume types of organizations. As much as I don't like to use white collar and blue collar terminology, because I feel like it's really outdated. I haven't seen anything else to replace it. So using that terminology, it seemed historically to be something which was perhaps more thought about in the higher volume type space. What I think we're seeing now is actually that's changing, and it's actually a solution which is extremely adaptable and something which absolutely sits within the white collar space, again using old outdated terminology. Professional hiring, I think, is the other phrase that's used, which I think also is a little insulting. So I think I'm really open for some kind of new definition.
We need terminology.
I'll work on that tomorrow. But I'd say, I think the going back to the question, what type of organization? An organization that has a decentralized hiring model at the moment, but actually they've lost control. The budget's over, the quality isn't there, everything's taking too long. To move that power back into a central function really then helps organizations achieve their goal.
Cool. Okay. No, makes complete sense. And obviously there's different similar solutions out there. What between sort of MSP and RPO, what's kind of the key differences there then?
So again, typically, I guess RPO you would see as working more predominantly within the professional space. So you'd sort of see this division with RPO doing the office-based professional stuff, and MSP delivering the volume type stuff. I think though, with the way the markets are currently moving, that those models that's just completely outdated now. So it's changing. So I think it's probably wrong to consider it in that sense right now. What I would say though, within sort of traditional RPO, and again, from my personal experience, you would build a delivery team of really strong generalist recruiters typically. Some may have some functional knowledge, especially if it's an organization that has a strong sort of niche area, for example, pharmaceutical or life sciences. But you're not going to find an RPO that has an expert within every single function that you hire. That's not what RPO is about. You know, it's about having very strong generalists that are able to deliver lots of different things. Now, what we're looking at within our particular offering here is actually something that you would have an expert within that function or within that role type delivering that hiring. So you're gaining from the expertise that sits across our
and that's
network.
where you can see the real value.
Absolutely, yeah, because those individuals are not only knowledgeable of those roles and geographies, but they're also networked already. So actually, they've got immediate reach into the market. They don't have to go and learn it.
Speed to market gets much quicker.
Exactly. And I think you'll also find there's a much higher quality in terms of what's coming through on from a shortlisting perspective, and also likely a reduced time to hire as well.
Yeah, makes sense.
I'd also say as well, I think within the MSP model that there's a lot more flexibility. RPO. Okay. Typically, you're locked in for quite a long time, and that's typically the kind of model that you would see. It used to be 3 to 5 years on an RPO contract.
Right.
So again, I think with the MSP model, you're less locked into a specific delivery structure.
Okay.
You're able to flex and scale with an organisation if they're hiring all of their engineering teams within the first 6 months. Great, we switch on our engineering specialists. But actually, if the plan for the last 6 months of the year is to focus on corporate functions and supply chain, then we switch on those capabilities.
Okay.
So you have that flexibility and adaptability.
Okay. So commercially then, so the key differences as well. There must be some key differences commercially how it's structured as well then. Or hard to say because there's.
Again, I think typically what you'd find within an RPO or an MSP is ideally something that makes the client's life as easy as possible. So what you'd want to see, is some kind of sort of monthly management fee, and then typically success fees. Now, the structure of those and the way that they're done will vary, I think, between the MSP and the RPO models.
So I've heard about a new talent audit framework. This is doing the rounds at the moment. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I have been really excited about launching, and something which, professionally speaking, I've been thinking for a long time is an absolutely sort of fantastic solution that the market needs. The talent audit framework is essentially a consultative piece of work that we will undertake that really looks into all aspects of an organisation's talent acquisition process. This is from things like their initial workforce planning. How is that done? How do they look to phase, for example, role release across the year? But also, what is their hiring process? What does that typically look like? Do we have a huge number of variations?
Right.
We're looking at, for example, value from the supply chain as well. So again, could be an organisation that has massive PSL, but actually you see the same 4 or 5 organisations hiring. We're also looking at the optimization of existing technology, looking at the way that the brand is positioned in the external market piece as well.
So this goes a lot deeper than sort of traditional recruitment. You're really getting into the nuts and bolts of it all. Diving deep and find out what an organisation really needs.
Exactly, and often again, having done this type of work in the past, typically what we see is that we identify huge amounts of efficiencies, and I mean process efficiencies, cost efficiencies, but what it also does is help highlight to an organisation where they maybe need to invest a bit more time and focus. So that could be, for example, around hiring manager training. They may need to put some more thinking around their sort of employer brand in the external marketplace. It could be that they need to figure out how they're using AI, or they're even their own HRIS or ATS in a better way. So really, this is a sort of, a pure consulting piece of work. So, coming in agnostic to the outcomes, but ultimately what we're looking to do is to present back a series of recommendations that will enable an organisation to be better, to be quicker, to be focusing on high quality hires, and ultimately, again, helping an organisation achieve its goals.
Brilliant. Yeah, so like we said earlier, this is more than just, a role being open in recruitment. This is much behind that, finding out the whys,
Yes.
the efficiencies.
Yep.
Is there a better way of doing this? Do
Mhm.
you really need this? I suppose is one of the questions that would come out of this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's fascinating because it's work that a lot of HR leaders wish to undertake, but ultimately don't have the bandwidth to do.
Okay. Yes. So you're aiming this at HR leaders.
Essentially, yes. This is I think the sort of the core profile of individual who would want to understand how they could be more effective in what is quite a large part of their role, exactly. But the impact of it is really organisational wide.
And how long will this audit take, and what kind of disruption might be for like HR teams and stuff?
This sounds like a long question.
It could be, but I'll keep a short answer to it. So in terms of timeframes, again, there'll be variation depending on the size, the complexity of the organisation. But I would say typically around 4 weeks is what would be needed in order to complete the work, the research, the analysis, and then to look at those recommendations. Now, what we would ask is for an organisation to spend, and we have a window of time planned in prior to that 4-week window, where the organisation ideally would be looking into the data and uncovering the data that we would be looking to analyse. Interestingly, that's often a part of the process where we find organisations fall down that actually they don't have that data, which is telling in and of itself. But in terms of sort of disruption, I'd say very limited disruption. Again, through communication, we would share very openly with HR leaders and those involved in the audit what is required from them and give them as much advance notice as possible. But again, it could be data that we're looking for, it could be qualitative interviews, for example, or even just mapping processes. But disruption kept to a minimum. We need to keep business as usual going.
And are there any sort of organisational sizes, sectors that this would be most suitable for?
I would say it's probably something which every organisation would absolutely benefit from. One thing to bear in mind, though, is the complexity of the organisation. So if you're looking at an organisation that has a very large contingent workforce, as well as a permanent workforce that's doing manufacturing and distribution, as well as all the corporate spaces, there could be some levels to it that would require separate analysis.
Okay.
So again, it's more just a bear in mind that could happen.
So Phil, you've told us how you fell into this. What's your story then from getting into recruitment to where you are now?
The heady heights of where I am now. Again, keeping what is potentially a long story as short as possible. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I sort of started an executive search, which I think is a little bit uncommon. But initially, my early career, I was focusing on that as a researcher and then as a consultant. Those types of roles are obviously sector focused, so initially finance, and then I specialised in the pharmaceutical life sciences space for a number of years. And that is really sort of where I started working a little bit more sort of internationally across Europe, across the US. I moved into the sort of outsource space when it was, I guess, still relatively in its infancy. And so I think the great advantage of that was actually watching organisations grow within that outsourcing space, sort of that RPO and that sort of MSP environment. So I've worked with a number of the sort of large providers within that space across that time, and have led small, medium and large size teams, globally based, from sort of hiring 100 people a year to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people a year. So that has given me, I think, great exposure to multiple sectors, to multiple geographies, but also working at senior level with individuals really across organisations in the commercial space.
And the psychology degree, has that helped along the way?
Definitely has helped. Also helped that I went back to uni about 10 years ago and completed a master's in occupational psychology.
Now we're really impressed.
Whilst holding down a full-time job. And absolutely that really helped as well. And sort of, it took me a while to figure out what it was I wanted to sort of to go into a bit more depth on from a studying perspective, but that seemed to work very well. Bearing in mind I was working with organisations that were going through change, and looking at it through a very sort of people-focused lens. That also led to some time that I spent working in-house as well, so leading talent acquisition teams as part of HR functions. So I've also got some experience on that side of the fence as well.
Never stop learning, eh?
Well, exactly. So hopefully with that sort of, hopefully nearly a full 360 view in terms of sort of, how we can be more effective, more efficient, how we can drive quality into the TA process is the stuff that I can bring to the table now and help organisations to deliver.
Cool. Yeah. And so you, from starting out to exec search to then moving into outsourcing.
Yes.
Was that a conscious decision by you because you wanted to get into that, or was it just an opportunity that arose, and how did that come about then?
So I think what I understood from the sort of outsourcing space was quite different from what it was in reality when I joined it. Initially, I was, again, looking to use my sort of sector knowledge at that point in the pharmaceutical space. And so my understanding was great. I'd be coming in as outside working with a pharma company and using some of my knowledge and my experience to do that. I absolutely did that. But my knowledge and experience was within certain types of hires within the pharmaceutical space. What I hadn't really sort of anticipated is that rather than, yes, I'd be hiring specialists in clinical research or health economics or marketing, I'd also be hiring finance people, and HR people and sales folks that I hadn't done before. So that piece was kind of quite, eye-opening that suddenly you're actually looking at every function.
It's a lot of knowledge you're having to learn about different sectors.
Absolutely.
It's not easy, just, blagging that, I suppose, just in different areas. But
exactly. And the other piece as well, when again, moving into that sort of outsource area where, you are embedded within the client and, managing all of their hiring, is that you can't fail. Unlike perhaps a contingent model where you may have 15 roles on and actually 5 of them you're not quite sure about, 5 of them are looking good, 5 will have your absolute energy. You have to fill all of your roles when you're working in this model. So again, the pressure is very different. You can't give up.
How did you find that pressure then in the early stages?
I'm still here today, so I like to think I'm adaptable.
Still in recruitment.
Exactly. I just learn. You just have to learn very quickly, and a lot of what I did was learn by asking questions. So I could quite easily sit down with the FD and say, look, I'm not an expert in hiring accountants. I'm an expert in finding people. So tell me what you need. I will go and then find them.
What are the skill sets you're looking for?
Exactly. And again, asking the candidates and being open and saying, look, I'm not an expert in this, but I can tell you everything about this company I'm hiring for. And I know that we're looking for these particular things, but please just tell me a little bit more. One thing people like doing, case in point, is talking about yourself. So it's a good way to learn.
But also, again, when people are looking at moving jobs anyway, it's more about the company anyway, right? Because they know the job that they do. So it's more about the opportunity at the company anyway. So you kind of had that already anyway.
Absolutely. And I think, again, within this outsourcing space is something that we haven't necessarily touched on, is that it's a very different sort of way that you go to market. So again, if you're working with a very large contingent PSL, you're kind of losing control of your brand in that external market space. When you're working in this sort of more embedded or outsourced model through one provider, you have a lot more control over the way that brand is being presented in the external market. And that is critical. Even though the market we're in right now is very employer-led, I think, as we all know, the cycle is that it goes up and down. So actually, within a few years' time, it could be a very candidate-driven market, and we're all desperately trying to pull the right people in.
Great.
So that brand positioning, critical.
Absolutely. Yeah. Perfect. So in terms of for the future, then, like, how big can this be? Where can it go then?
Sky's the limit, really. So I think the more immediate future is on launching the MSP and Talent Audit framework as new solutions that SSG is offering into the market. That is something that we're sort of looking at right now, and again, sort of really looking forward to taking to market and engaging our amazing network to deliver that kind of work. I think from that we'll have our proof of concept. and from that we can then grow. I think initially we would probably want to look more nationally, perhaps, and then sort of start looking at more international expansion within that solution delivery. So I think that's probably the next sort of 6 to 12 months.
Yep.
Ahead. Of course, those timelines can definitely be brought forward.
Yeah.
So I think it's really what the market needs at that point in time.
Cool. Okay. Sounds exciting.
I'm excited by it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Busy times ahead.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Thanks so much for your time, Phil, and great to have you on the I Fell Into This podcast.
Yeah, no, pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Phil. And before you go, we have one final question that we ask people, is that if you hadn't fallen into recruitment, what would you be doing now?
Ooh, I guess it would either be pilot or rock star.
Well, they're two different things. So,
they are, but
So,
can you sing? Is it? You play any instruments? Or?
Yeah, I did in the past.
Yeah?
Yeah. No,
in a band?
I was, yeah. I used to sing. I played keyboards as well and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I was always obsessed with flying when I was a kid. So
Right.
Okay.
yeah, quite divergent career paths.
Yeah, different.
Yeah.
Yeah, slightly different.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
One has more makeup, I guess, but that's about it.
Yeah. Cool.
Both back up the air miles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Thanks for that, Phil. Thanks for coming in.
That's
Great
all
to
right.
talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Good to be here.